Analogies are a way to compare and relate two things together. In this video, we composed a list of 12 brain structures and things that they are analogous to, as well as an explanation to our thought process. The frontal lobe mainly deals with reasoning, motor control, emotion, and language. The frontal lobe contains the motor cortex, which involves planning and coordinating movement to then allow us to get through our day-to-day life. In addition, the frontal lobe is located at the front of the brain and goes back to the central sulcus in our brain, which runs from the right and left between the frontal and parietal lobes. The frontal lobe is analogous to internet, whether it be dial-up or LTE on our cell phones. The reason we compared it to this is because if there are not good connections in our brain, we are not able to make educated or reasonable decisions within the frontal lobe and even move the way we need or want to. Additionally, we connected the neurodegenerative disease Alzheimer's to our frontal lobe as well as dial-up or LTE internet. The reason behind this connection is because patients with Alzheimer's disease are not able to make connections as easy as people without the disease. The brain's parietal lobe is located behind the frontal lobe along the central sulcus as well. It is involved in processing information from the body's multiple senses. Additionally, the parietal lobe contains the somatosensory cortex, which is necessary for processing sensory information for our body, like touch, temperature, and pain. For this analogy, we compared the parietal lobe to a thermostat. The reasoning behind this analogy was because the parietal lobe processes incoming sensory information just like a thermostat that turns on when it gets below a certain temperature. The temporal lobe is located at the temples and is associated with hearing, memory, emotion, and some aspects of language. The main function is within the auditory cortex, which is responsible for processing our auditory information. Wernicke's area is also located here and is important for processing speech comprehension. Those with damage to Wernicke's area can produce sensible language, but they would not be able to understand it. The temporal lobe is analogous to Siri because it allows us to search and process through the entire internet, or in this case our brain, to then interpret what is said. Now, patients with Parkinson's disease are very sharp in their mind, like Siri, but often have a very difficult time expressing those thoughts due to their body's or Siri's ability to not be able to interpret the signals coming to and from the brain to tell their body to move or say a certain thing, or in Siri's case, what we say into her microphone. The occipital lobe is located at the very back of the brain and contains the primary visual cortex, which is responsible for interpreting incoming visual information. There is a close relationship between the position of an object in a person's visual field and the position of the object's representation on the cortex. We compared the occipital lobe to a neighborhood, with each visual cortex being its own house or apartment complex because the occipital lobe houses the 5 visual cortices. The limbic system is involved in processing both emotion and memory. Smell can project directly to the limbic system, which means smell can evoke emotional responses. The limbic system is made up of many parts, 3 of the most important being the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the hypothalamus. We compared the limbic system with television because it's a common thing to get emotional responses to the shows you're watching. For example, crying while watching the Titanic when Jack died. The thalamus is where your sensory information is produced and then sent out to different parts of the body or brain like a relay station in order to invoke response or stimuli. We compared the thalamus to a secretary due to the fact that if a secretary doesn't sort incoming information properly, the system breaks down over time and it doesn't work as well as it once did. We also related this to Huntington's disease, which we will get more in depth into later on. The amygdala is involved in emotion and in tying emotional meaning to our memories. Common emotions tied to memories include aggression and fear. We compared the amygdala to a fire alarm because the sound or thought of a fire alarm going off can invoke memories you had involving that object, such as being angry that the alarm went off while you were in the shower. The hippocampus is an essential structure for learning and memory, while it focuses mainly on long-term memory. We compared the hippocampus to a book because in school, after a lecture, one might do the assigned reading to cement the information into their brain, allowing for it to be memorized. The corpus callosum is the band of fibers which contains nerves that connect the right and left hemispheres of our brain to allow them to communicate. We compared the corpus callosum to a set of jumper cables, and the reason for this analogy stems from the fact that jumper cables are able to connect two cars and allow power to go from one to the other. The reticular formation is found in the midbrain and extends into the forebrain down to the hindbrain. The reticular formation helps to regulate sleep and wake cycles, arousal, alertness, and motor activities. We compared the reticular formation to an alarm clock because an alarm clock allows you to sleep and wake up on time, and the reticular formation helps to naturally do the same. The cerebellum, also known as the little brain, receives messages from the structures in our ear to control balance, coordination, movement, and motor skills. The cerebellum is also thought to be an important area for processing procedural memory. We compared the cerebellum to a voicemail system because, like the voicemail system does, the cerebellum receives messages and stores it. These are the analogies to help remember the functions of the brain structures discussed.